All right, greetings, folks, and welcome to the COD Entrepreneurship Club, also known as CODEC. My name is Peter James, and I'm so excited to have you guys here today. This is COD campus, 200 and some acres of the best community college in the country. And I happen to be a professor here on campus, a business and entrepreneurship professor. I'm excited to lead this club here. Studio audience, show your appreciation. Give me a round of applause. That had me choking up a little bit, folks, as well. So thank you so much for that. I'm excited here. This is our third episode for the semester. We've had some great guests. We have one more episode after this in December, which is the last week of the semester. Very excited about what's going on. Very excited for you guys all to join us as well. At CODEC, our goal is to expose students and local community members to entrepreneurs and small business owners. By them sharing their story, such as we're going to do today, we'll show how entrepreneurship is definitely an option when your education is complete. And of course, again, as I mentioned, we're on COD campus here in Glen Ellen, Illinois. Beautiful Glen Ellen, beautiful, cold, rainy Glen Ellen, that is for sure. But we have a special guest today. And without further ado, I just want to jump right into our interview and our special guest, Rodney Davis. Rodney, how are you?
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me.
So excited for you to be here.
Appreciate it.
The reason I'm excited is because, I teach the business and entrepreneurship. I teach a lot of the stuff here as well. And I think a lot of times students hear theory, they hear about concepts, they hear about different stuff going on overall, but they don't hear the real deal. And I think you're the real deal as well. So how long have you and I known each other now?
About 10 plus years, probably.
Quite a few years.
Quite a few years. 15 maybe.
And I'm excited that you jumped into the entrepreneurship game.
It jumped, yep. Exactly.
So first of all, tell the audience a little bit about your background, if you don't mind.
All right, born and raised in Aurora. Thought I was going to be the next Michael Jordan, and played hoops in high school, played hoops in college. Got a chance to do some, playing in the professional level. Didn't make it to the Jordan level, but saw myself as always being an entrepreneur. Got my degree in business administration some years ago. Won't say how many years ago, but like most of you and my parents, it was always told to me, get your education, go get a good job, stay there for 30 years, retire, that's it. Yeah. And that's somewhat true, but yet I've realized that wasn't for me. And so about 15 or so years ago, I went into investment banking for a while. I did that. I did some extensive traveling, did well, enjoyed it, but again, it's not like something that you've created on your own. Yeah. And so that's when I just took that leap of faith about 15 years or so ago. And really started out, not even where I am now, but really in a nonprofit sector. Started a nonprofit organization in Aurora, really to help at-risk individuals. Done well, put that kind of on the back burner when you realize doing work in nonprofit is just that. You're trying to raise money, find money, programming. So I had to kind of look at a different strategy in the last few years, and that's where we are here today, and that's where I've created what we've created right now.
So I'm anxious to hear even more about that story as well. And you said something that I often tell students about, that go to school and get a good job is not as black and white as it's always made out to be as well. And so college is great, but college is not 100% the only answer as well. So you got the bug for the entrepreneurship thing here, and how did that start, even with the nonprofit? Why did you think that giving back or being socially entrepreneurial, socially responsible, why was that a thing for you to start out with?
Well, to me, it was where my heart was.
Sure.
And with anything that you do, if your heart's not in it, it's not really gonna matter. So it was really taking my life experiences and being able to share it with those that are kind of walking that same path.
Sure.
So that's where the concept came in creating the nonprofit.
Yeah.
From there, it just became, once I started understanding that space and that industry, it became, okay, you're trying to raise money, you're trying to raise money, you're trying to raise money.
Right.
It becomes a struggle, especially a new entrepreneur, new nonprofit. So then I realized, you know what, create the vessel that's going to feed the nonprofit.
Nice.
And that's kind of where I am right now.
Okay.
And so for the last 2 or 3 years, that's why I've kind of put that on the back burner. It's still there waiting,
Yeah.
but it's waiting for me to kind of feed it myself.
Good stuff, good stuff. And studio audience, feel free to raise your hand, ask questions about our Rodney's journey a little bit, because we're getting ready to dive into his feeder business to a certain extent, as he likes to call it here as well. So tell us, what made you get into this feeder business? I want you to go ahead and tell us all about it, what that looks like, and then a little bit of where you are right now before our studio audience gives us some questions as well.
Well, I was pretty much just approached by a family friend.
Sure.
Had been a little frustrated with the interviewing process, and of course, all that have been through that process, especially at a higher level, it could be pretty daunting. It can take a long time. It can be pretty frustrating. Sure. And then on the flip side, if you look at the individuals that are responsible, the interviewers, they can get frustrated as well, just through, contacting or even getting the right individual. So it came to me, hey, what do you think about some type of a platform that would help you screen individuals? So I'm like, okay, what does that look like? Sure. So we've all heard of the platforms. You talk about Monster, you talk about Indeed, yeah. Career Builder. Sure. Those particular sites are always good for what? Resumes. How do you find people? And I worked a little bit as a executive recruiter some time ago too. And one of our biggest, this was well before the internet, and one of our biggest even issues back then was, how do you find good people? Sure. And think about it, without the internet, how do you find good people? And now that's not the issue. It's more so the issue now, how you know which person is the right for your business. Yeah. It's really what it comes down to. You can ask any HR professional, recruiter, so forth. You can go to all these posting sites and you can get a ton of resumes. And that's what's been happening. They've been getting inundated with resumes, sure. Stacks and stacks. And they realize, how do I know which one of these individuals are worth even bringing in to sit down for an interview? So a lot of times what happens is they wind up, one side we keep, one side, and it's just a matter of seconds. It's really seconds. Yeah. I mean, they see it, you may have a typo, you may have something that's kind of wrong on your resume, you get pitched, and you could have been a perfect candidate. Again, they just don't have time because they're so inundated. Yeah. So that came to my attention. I'm like, wow, so what way can we help streamline that particular process? Yeah. And so what we've created is an online video interviewing platform. Wow. And we've since learned that this is something that's just starting to take off. You'll see it now as we jump in head first, we realize, there's some companies out here already. Yeah, there's some that's doing it already. So then it's like, but it's not as big as people would think, because again, companies and so forth, it's hard to turn a ship, especially major corporations that have moved in a certain direction for so long, and now you're going to introduce something that's totally different. Yeah. So it takes them a while to get on board. So with that being said, there's still opportunity. Sure. So that's where we are, and that's been about 3 years ago or so now. And it went from a concept of being on a piece of paper to actually getting it to a prototype. Yeah. And that's where the fun began, but yet again, that's where the struggles began as well.
So yes, we have a question over here from our studio audience. Yes, sir.
In your experience, when you are seeing individuals coming in for an interview and you look at their resume, like what is something that puts you like, whoa, this person is doing that, I'm so proud of him, or like that's unique? Because like, for example, I have my own podcast, and that kind of something that differentiates me from everyone in this room. So like, what are things that we should be doing right now that when we go into that interview, we'll be like, whoa.
The one thing, even from my executive recruiting experience, is that, and we were high level executive recruiting, so anywhere from chief executive officers up, directors. And one of the things that we always looked for, you have kind of a baseline of what you always do on a resume, right? Here's my objectives, here's my experience. And we would kind of just graze over that because it was more so of, what are your accomplishments? What have you really done? Yeah. And so, measurable accomplishments. Yeah. I took a company from here to here. I started a podcast and had 0 followers. I got 1,000. So those type of things would always get employers looking at it like, wow, they took a business from here to there, from A to B to C. those are the type of things that you look for, executives look for when they're hiring.
I guess ways to differentiate yourself for sure on that resume, especially when you only have a few seconds as well. Any other questions from the studio audience? Yes, ma'am.
So did your prior experience in investment banking assist you in your business endeavors?
You know what, not really. I mean, I think for the most part, it just gave me a sense of, being able to conduct myself in a business format. I worked, again, I dealt a lot with stockbrokers and things from all over the country. And just to see how business and money and things work, I think got me more hungry to go out and do something. I would say this, as we continue to grow, how you manage the money, I think is definitely going to be a key part that I've learned over the years. So that's probably not so far yet, but it's probably coming where I've got that background as well.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the struggle. We're going to come to the studio. Tell us a little bit about the struggle, especially from the app or the technical side. I know you're not deep on that side of it as well, but from what you know, because I know a lot of students always come to me and say, I want to start an app. I want to start an app,
right.
like that. So from your perspective, what was that struggle like? What have been the challenges down that path?
Well, the biggest challenge for me, just starting out when someone brings to you an idea, and again, I'm a business major, so when you taking a concept and bring it to a prototype, you have that strategy and vision to do it, but I'm not a coder. I'm not a person that can write code. I'm not a person that have no idea of the background of how to create something like this. So for me, the biggest challenge was finding someone that could actually get on the same page.
Right.
And we learned some valuable lessons early on just with that. And I mean, I'm talking about financially, we took a hit right at the beginning because we didn't know the space, and trying to hire somebody that can tell you one thing, and again, we had no idea whether this person really knew what they were doing or not. Well, we found out probably 6 months or so later that we were getting a runaround. We had deposits down. We never got any type of a product at all. We wind up having to fire that individual.
Wow.
And we're still in litigation. It's something that's been on the back burner. But for us, do we have time to go fight that, or do we have to keep moving forward? So that's kind of was our biggest struggle then, because we weren't technical guys to get somebody on board that was actually on the same page with us.
And I always suggest to students nowadays, especially as they're young, that coding skill set is, even though you may not turn it into a career, just being aware of it and having that skill set a little bit helps out in the long run.
Tremendously. Absolutely, because again, no background at all in that. So it's all what a person is telling you. So you have to trust in what they're saying. And it just didn't work out. And that's one of the things with any business. Is going to be some times when you just learn the hard way. And that's what we did. And, fortunately for us, we were able to get an individual on board that I personally knew, that was a computer science major at U of I, that had his degree in computer engineering, his master's in computer engineering, was an individual that I coached as a youngster, and he came back, and between him leaving or finishing up his master's degree, he now works for the federal government in that space of cybersecurity, but between that was a long process of him waiting. So he was able to come in and create this for us as he was waiting to get employed. So it kind of worked out for us that way.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. You had a question?
Yeah, my question was so how did you start your business? How did you find the people that you think, these are the people that I trust the most, and I believe that it's a good idea for me to work with them to start a business?
That's a really good question, because anyone that's thinking about going into business on their own, you're probably going to have to work with someone down the line that you don't know. And being able to sit down like we are right now and really look into a person's eyes and having a conversation is going to be something. I know we're in a generation of text messages and emails. You're going to have to sit down and really talk to an individual and have the right questions. And that's what we didn't have the first time out. We didn't know what the right questions were. I mean, because again, we weren't in that space at all. So you kind of learn that as you go, but I would say, really getting a feel for an individual, sitting down with that person, doing your homework before you sit down with that person, and which is very key. And then check references. I mean, and I think all of those things, which we knew to do, we just didn't do a good job of it. We didn't check, he shows us, okay, here's my sites that I've done. And even that, it didn't wow us.
Right.
It didn't even wow us at that particular time, but it was like, we were so ready to go.
Yeah.
So ready to get moving. And we had such a great idea to where it became, 10 grand later, that's kind of how it is.
I got a question. We're going to come back to you just a second there. I got a question about your business. So tell us a little bit more detail about the business and the platform, and especially who your target market is as you're thinking about moving forward in the business, as you're thinking about selling the service as well. Who's your target market?
Well, right now, anyone in HR, and again, this has changed a little bit too. I mean, you think of anyone that's dealing in the space of recruiting or hiring. I mean, that could be anyone. That could be COD. They're always hiring. Think about the college level as far as just applications. How do you get in as a student? You go through a process. So even colleges are screening individuals on a daily basis.
Wow.
So instead of, we're that broad to where we can go in a lot of different directions, but what I found in the last few months or so is that in the HR space, especially in the private sector, they're slow to move because there's a lot of red tape. So for a startup that's really trying to get traction, trying to get funding, trying to get financing, investors want to see results. They want to see something moving in the right area before they're going to invest in you. Well, dealing directly with major companies, they move really slow. So that initially wasn't for us, and it still isn't, but again, something we definitely go back and piggyback on. The other thing was like a nonprofit organization. We thinking nonprofits. The money's normally not there for the service that we have, so we kind of went around and said, that may not work. Our initial target now has been mainly in athletics, which has been something that, we realize as talking to coaches, especially at the college level, that they don't have any type of mechanism at all right now that they use for screening potential recruits. Now if anybody that's in sports and athletics, they have what is called huddle, which, a lot of student athletes will post their particular highlights. And coaches will go on and pay a service to go see a kid's highlights. Well, that's great, but still, as a culture, and you're trying to find the right fit for your culture, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Or how do you waste time, or you don't want to waste time bringing somebody in on campus that doesn't fit your culture until you find out they're on campus and you spent a lot of money and resources to bring that individual on. So as I've gone out and spoken to coaches in the area at the college level, just here in the area here, they've been pretty quick to say, this makes sense for us.
Yeah.
So we're kind of focusing in on there for now, but there's just a lot of different areas that we can move from there.
Good stuff. More questions from the studio audience as well? Got this gentleman over here has got one more question. Actually, just one more question for you, sir. One more.
Okay, so coming from an investment backing in 2008, the reason why one of these companies failed is due to greed and due to many just stuff going on in your brain and wanting money. How did you change your mindset to going from money to no money and getting money back? I don't know if that question makes sense.
No, it makes sense. I mean, my belief is you can't be driven by money. I mean, you just can't. If you're thinking this is going to make me a ton of money and this is why I'm doing something, it's probably not going to be a very good idea to do it. That's just my personal belief. Now, if you put your heart and soul into something and you truly believe it and there's a market for it and you do it right, I think money will show up.
Yeah.
And you just got to get through that particular time of getting through. But doing something just for money is probably not going to be something that's long term.
And I'll even add to that for sure. If you're starting that business for money, most businesses are slow to ramp and slow to accelerate.
Absolutely.
So now if it's a year or two into it and you're not making money and you don't have that passion, you're going to go do something else.
Right.
So you better have a passion for whatever it is you're going to do, or else the money's not going to be there for you as well.
You know what? And I'll piggyback off of
Please, yeah.
that right there. We started about 3 years ago now. It'll be 3 years in December. And you talk about revenue, we have zero revenue right now. So that's 3 years of no revenue. And like Peter said, can you stomach that? Can you stomach the idea of someone saying, you know, this makes sense, but when you get revenue going, then come back to us. That's what I'm hearing time and time again from an investment standpoint. So you realize the 15th and 30th, normally paydays in the corporate structure come and go, and there's still no money. So can you get through that part? And that separates you from really taking this to the next level versus saying, you know what, I'll put it on the back burner and maybe I'll come back to it in a year, which a lot of times you never get a chance to go back to it. So, you know, 2 or 3 years is going to be probably the norm before you even can think about getting any type of revenue.
Yeah, that's definitely real world, which is why most people in society decide to go work for the man to get paid every 2 weeks as well, right? So more questions from the studio audience. I don't want the people in the front row to hog all the questions at all. Yes, sir.
During those, I guess it was those 3 years of struggle before you see a turnaround, how do you, even though it's a passion project, how do you stay passionate and I guess you say like going through those rough patches until you see your business turn around?
You know, that's a good question because, you know, the one thing you will notice or endure is that you'll have a lot of doors, I'm not gonna say slammed in your face, but there's a lot of no's. And with that becomes a lot of frustration and a lot of emotions where, you know, you're feeling like this today, but then that one phone call or that one conversation with someone that says, man, that's a great idea. Then that, you know, that energy that you need just to keep going. And it'll turn into the next day, to the next day, to the next day. And I think one thing that if I would have done it a little differently, and again, you try to plan out what you want to do all the time. I'm going to do this for so long, then I'm going to quit this, and then I'm going to go start this. It didn't work that way for me. You know, in a perfect world, it's great to save up and then move forward, but I knew at the time it was time to leave the investment banking business. I just did it pretty much cold turkey. It was 2 weeks, I'm out. And they were looking at me like, what are you doing? But it was just something I needed to be different. And so to go back to answer your question, there's some times when you realize, I don't know if I can do this. You know, I don't know if this is gonna, although I know it's a great service and it only takes that one individual or conversation to keep you uplifted, to keep moving. And that's kind of what I look for. Like something like this for me only inspires me more to keep moving forward.
That's good. So along those lines right there, who do you continue to surround yourself with, especially during these lean times, or even during the roller coaster, as I like to call it? Who do you surround yourself with to keep you motivated, to keep you passionate, to maybe say, hey, keep fighting because there's going to be positives at this end of this road? Yeah.
You know, I have learned over the years that, you know, if you want to take anything from a level here to here, you have to surround yourself with people that are already doing it or have done it or at a spot where you just would like to be. And, you know, mentorship is key. You know, I have a couple of really solid business mentors that have worked in more so of the not only entrepreneurs, but they've been in the corporate world where they've been high-level executives that have retired. And now just kind of, that's what they do. You know, they sit and talk and motivate and really help guide you in the right direction, or just something I can just throw ideas. And we've talked before where, you know, ideas, give me an idea. What do you think about this? You always have to have those individuals around you. Now, are those always your friends? Probably not. I mean, I'll be honest. Friends may look at you saying, why are you doing this? I mean, you could be over here, and that's true. You could be. And so you have to be able to fight that off, still be friends, but actually create another space of entrepreneurs or those that are willing to elevate you and look at the same mindset that you're on.
Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. And more questions from the studio audience. Yeah, we got here, then here. Yes, sir.
So how do you promote your service?
How do you promote it? Yeah.
You know, that's a good question. Right now, we're at the stage, and again, we're bare bone right now, and promoting for me is pretty much me. So I've kind of worked a strategy of because if you're in a service business, you got to have good service, right? Do you want to throw it out there and all of a sudden it'd be great to have 1 million individuals that want to have your service, and then all of a sudden you can't service them. So now all of that you've worked up for has been left for nothing, right? So how I've been able to do it is just kind of pick and choose strategically in different industries. So for instance, the sporting world, I know that industry and to the degree where coaches and so forth. So I'm kind of starting with this demoing. We got a pilot program going right now where I've chosen 5 to 10 universities that say, hey, use it, tell me what you think, get me that feedback, let them love it, and then maybe have a contract from there. And then from there, you just want to ramp things up. So I'm strategically taking my time as we get some really good success stories, as well as some things that may need to be addressed. We'll address that in that time, because I don't want to put ourselves out there and not be able to deliver when it's time to deliver, if that makes sense.
Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. Couple more questions. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to that whole 3-year process of building up. That's a lot of time. So I agree with the fact that it's important to stay optimistic throughout that time, but is there any measurements that you were personally taking to determine whether or not your path was continually worth pursuing? Because I mean, I don't want to say it, but I assume that there's some people out there that have just had bad ideas in this world.
Oh, absolutely.
So what is it you do to measure that and determine whether or not you should keep going throughout that 3-year process?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the things is the development of the actual prototype. So the measurement of where we were to where the things that needs to be added to it. So you kind of use that. Hey, we were here, now we're here. I've spoken to hundreds of individuals, in the business world that have said this is great, this is good. Now, if I had spoken to 100 that says this is not needed, I don't think this is, then you can have a pretty good idea. Not one person yet have I talked to that says this doesn't make sense. So there's a market for it. So now it's just execution. And for me, I look at it if this doesn't work, it's just because it wasn't properly executed. That's how I look at it now. So it goes back to pretty much his point. That's why we kind of strategically taking our time to get it right, to make sure when we ramp it up, we can go full force. But yeah, 3 years is what we've given ourselves, because again, when you're only working yourself and a couple other individuals, and one being the developer that's not a particular face-to-face person, and that's the thing, you have to go out and sell, it's face-to-face, and not everybody can do that. So, but the way we will ramp up is as we have the prototype period over, which is probably the first of the year, we're looking for individuals that can go out from a contract, just say we're going to contract out and say, hey, we give you an X amount % if you sell X amount. And there's individuals that's looking for opportunities. So that's our next strategy, to bring on a team of solid individuals that can go out. Now, again, you don't have to, pay the corporate taxes. You don't have to pay those, wages, but it's straight gig. Everybody's heard of the gig economy. What you're working on now, the Ubers, that's how people are making a little bit of extra cash. Well, this is a great way to do it as well. That's how we're kind of going to model it as we go forward, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, good,
Thank
good.
you.
Good stuff. That's good. So I got one more question before we get ready to wrap up. But anybody else from the studio
You said
audience?
wrap up?
Are we wrapping it up? You
Wow.
want to keep it going?
No,
I
that's-
can
man,
start.
that's
I can
great.
make
No,
some more
that's-
questions up. This is good stuff. So I got this young lady in the back, then this gentleman, and then I'll ask the final question. So
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, along this process, do you have feedback from your customer or from your client, whatever is it that make you down and motivating at the same time, and what is it?
Well, the only thing, the thing that comes that makes me down is when they say, this is great, but,
Yeah.
it's a great idea. I mean, I went to see an investor it's been about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we're trying to raise capital. You're always trying to raise capital too. That's the other thing. You're trying to sell, you're trying to raise. You're doing a little bit of both. And individuals that I knew, they're high-level investors, and liked the idea. They wanted 2 things. They wanted business to happen now. They wanted to see some things happening now, which we didn't have. and then they wanted a bigger percent of the business, which we wasn't going to give. So you come out of that meeting, man, we like it, but. So the buts always kind of bring you down, but you realize this is something that's going to work.
Yeah.
It's just you got to keep going. And you know, it didn't say this doesn't make sense. I don't think this is going to be a good idea. So that's not what we're hearing. It's just you need this or you need that.
Yeah,
so,
those of you who've taken an entrepreneurship class, that's the piece of the pie that I always talk about that they're trying to get. They're trying to get a piece of his pie, for sure. So, yes, sir.
Okay, so I have a question that is always in my mind. Okay, so what do you think about being your own boss and get your own business in the real world, and then being your own boss from online marketing? Like people that I've seen around since 2003, they have closed-minded mindset and be like, oh, that's a pyramid scheme,
right.
but really it's not.
It's right.
And how can you tell them that it's not a pyramid scheme? Like it's a legit business,
Well,
but they don't see it.
Here's first of all, you're not going to be able to change the mind of somebody that just don't get it. That's the first thing. You know, I learned this in sales. I'll tell you a quick story. This is when I was in investment banking. I was a outside wholesaler for an investment company here in the area. And my territory was Texas, the whole state of Texas, right? So anybody that's been to Texas is pretty big.
Big state.
So my first opportunity to going out on the road, I'm going to see a brokerage firm, brokerage house of a couple of hundred individuals, and you know, you're kind of psyched up. You're about to make your move. You're on the plane. You fly down. You feel like you're somebody. You got your suit on, and you know, you get on that plane. I get in that night before, you know, really kind of anxious about what's going to happen the next day. It's my first. You know, I've been on the phone all the time. Now it's time to go meet people face to face. So I get up, go to Dunkin' Donut, got my coffee, got my boxes of donuts. I'm going into this office, and I get on the phone and call. And at the time, it wasn't even really cell phones. It's been that long ago. It's on the pay phone call, and like, hey, this is so-and-so this is Rodney from so-and-so company. I'm down the street. We'll be in a minute. We have a meeting. The guy says, the manager of the brokerage firm, you know what, we're busy today, so it's not going to work. Boom. I'm like, wow, what do? I've got all these donuts. My next meeting is not until a lunch meeting. We're talking about 7:30 in the morning. So it's like, wow, what do? So talking about being discouraged right away, you know, how do you pick yourself up from that? And so I called my boss at the time, which was the vice president, and I'm like, hey, Kevin, his name was Kevin. He's like, Kevin, this is what am I supposed to do? They just hung up on me. They said, do I go in? He said, no, don't worry about it. He's like, don't worry about it. He said, Rod, in this business, this is one thing, and this is the thing I want to say to you right here. Some will, some won't. Who cares who's next? And if you keep that in your mind, that means some will, some won't. Who cares who's next? So you can't let those type of things, that individual that says no, affect you from moving forward. So every time I had that feeling of rejection, some will, some won't, who cares, who's next?
I have that feeling already for a long time, since
Right.
2003, but that's not giving me it's not gonna make me stop, you know?
Right.
Because I know that as being your own boss, no matter what happens in the past, just keep moving forward, and somehow it's gonna be successful. Because for me, I follow lots of millionaires and billionaires on SoundCloud, YouTube, you know, Spotify, and I see that they never went to college, and somehow they were successful in life, and they never worked a job in the whole life. So I was like, okay, how are they doing it? I want to be like them, you know. So I've been doing online business as well. I do have a regular job. And I
How's it going? How's it going? How's the online business going?
So I joined a new one recently, about August. It's a health business, right?
Okay.
And I was kind of skeptical back in July.
Okay.
But I was like, you know what, forget it. Let me join it and see how it goes for me. And damn, it's amazing.
Okay,
Right.
good.
Amazing.
So it's going well. So it's
Yeah.
okay.
It's going well.
Because the thing I was going to say, good is going well, is once you find something, you stay with it. Because if you don't want to start jumping around, well, that didn't work, let me go here, because now you're going to find yourself just kind of like on that wheel of just not getting anywhere. But good is working for you. I mean, again, some people are going to get it, some people won't. You just got to move on to those that will.
So here's my last question for you there, Rodney. This has been phenomenal. The audience participation has been great. So I always end all these interviews with one final question, especially as putting yourself back in the shoes of your old college days. So knowing then what you know now, especially for the benefit of our student body here, what would you tell your younger self? What would you do differently if you were sitting where these students were sitting at, thinking about business, thinking about the future, career, that?
I think I would have just paid attention more. I wasn't one that got close to my professors. I wasn't one that, class time is over, it's time, I'm out. I mean, I'm sure it's like that for a lot of you still.
Right.
Those individuals, not everybody, but some, they all know, but some that you can really gravitate to, I would have wished I would have done that more.
Yeah.
Paid more attention to those professors that are really in it to try to help you along. And, learning from those individuals, not thinking you know it all, but actually finding those mentors, and what better way than those that are teaching you already. Yeah. So I wish I would have, I can honestly say to this day, there's not one professor I've ever had that I even stay in contact with or even really know, to be honest. And that's kind of sad. You want to be able to have some relationship with those that are, and again, not everybody out there professor-wise welcomes that, but I'm sure there's a lot that do. I would take advantage of it.
Yeah. Good stuff as well. Hey folks, let's give Rodney a hand.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And this concludes another episode of the CODEC Show, third episode for fall 2019. Look forward for those of you joining us on YouTube to join us again next time, actually 2 more weeks, for a final episode for fall 2019. Thank you so much. See you then.